empty green space in Memorial Circle on Columbia Island, a man-made island in the Potomac River managed by the National Park Service. The United States Triumphal Arch will be outfitted with beautiful artwork and depictions celebrating the success of the American people over our 250-year history and the enduring triumph of the American spirit. Long after everyone in this room is gone, our children and grandchildren will remain inspired by this national monument. Beginning construction this year on the architectural arc is a fitting way to commemorate the 250th anniversary of American independence. Great nations build beautiful structures that cultivate national pride and love of country, and this triumphal arch should be a project that all Americans of all political persuasions can support because it's a monument for every American to celebrate 250 years of our nation's proud history. And again, the plans for this will be submitted tomorrow. We'll have many more announcements with respect to our 250th anniversary in the coming months as we look forward to the 4th of July. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. The Iranian port blockade is now fully enforced, the U.S. halting all maritime traffic in and out of the country. President Trump says another round of U.S.-Iran peace talks could take place within days. President Trump says China is very happy about the U.S.'s move to secure the Strait of Hormuz, adding that Beijing has agreed not to send weapons to Iran. President Trump said today China has agreed to not provide weapons. In addition, he's also saying the war with Iran is almost over. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are set to vote on a controversial section of a spy bill known as FISA. Critics could delay it while President Trump is calling on the GOP to unite. A brutal attack leaves a DHS employee dead. Police say a 40-year-old woman was shot and stabbed while she was walking her dog.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Central Command says the U.S. military has stopped all ships from passing through its blockade of Iranian ports. That's during the first 48 hours of launching the operation.
All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance. Now.
CENTCOM added that 9 vessels have complied with orders to turn around and return toward an Iranian port or coastal area. President Trump ordered the blockade on Sunday after talks between the U.S. and Iran broke down. Yesterday, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper said the U.S. is maintaining maritime superiority in the Middle East. Cooper added the U.S. military has completely halted trade going in and out of Iran by sea since the blockade began Monday. CENTCOM said U.S. forces are continuing to support freedom of navigation for ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz to non-Iranian destinations. Now a look at developing U.S.-Iran peace talks. President Trump says another round of discussions could take place within days in Pakistan. NTD's Daniel Monahan reports.
President Trump saying yesterday that Pakistan's capital city, Islamabad, is the likely location for U.S.-Iran peace talks in an interview with the New York Post. The president citing strong leadership from Pakistan's military, specifically praising Pakistan's field marshal, calling him fantastic. President Trump built a relationship with Pakistan's Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir during Pakistan's war with India, which ended with a U.S.-brokered peace deal in May last year. The president confirming he would not attend the Iran peace talks. He did not say who would be attending. The president also rejected reports of a proposal allowing Iran to resume uranium enrichment after 20 years, insisting Tehran must not gain any advantage. Analysts warn any temporary limits could risk non-compliance, while Iranian officials say ending enrichment remains off the table. President Trump saying he views the war as close to over, speaking on Fox News.
I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
In Washington, Secretary of State Marco Rubio hosted Israeli and Lebanese ambassadors for direct talks. The meetings come amid ongoing Israeli military operations in southern Lebanon. While both sides described the discussions as constructive, no ceasefire agreement was reached. The State Department says all parties agreed to launch direct negotiations at a mutually agreed time and place. Rubio says the talks are not only about a ceasefire, but also about reducing the influence of Hezbollah, a U.S.-designated terrorist organization with ties to Iran. Lebanon's health ministry reports more than 2,100 people have been killed and around 1 million displaced in recent Israeli strikes. Israel says displaced residents will not be allowed to return to southern Lebanon until the area is fully demilitarized. As talks continue and pressure builds, attention now turns to whether this moment could open the door to a more stable phase in the conflict. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Israel says its negotiations with Lebanon don't include a ceasefire in its fight against Hezbollah. An Israeli government spokesperson calling the terror group an obstacle to long-term agreement between the two neighbors.
The objective is extremely straightforward. It is to disarm Hezbollah, to dismantle terror infrastructure and create the conditions for lasting peace between Israel and Lebanon. Now, for both Israel and Lebanon, these direct negotiations are to resolve outstanding issues, of course, because security, stability, and prosperity cannot coexist with an armed terrorist force dominating a sovereign state.
Israeli and Lebanese officials met yesterday, marking the first direct talks between the two countries in decades. Their discussions took place a week into a fragile ceasefire between the United States, Israel, and Iran. President Trump today posting a new message focused on the Strait of Hormuz, China and Iran mixing talk of cooperation with strong warnings. In the post, he writes, quote, "China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I am doing it for them also and the world." He also wrote, "They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran." The president adding a personal remark about Chinese leader Xi Jinping, writing that Xi would give Trump a warm welcome when he goes there in a few weeks. The president also saying, "We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting?" Ending on a warning note, however, stating, quote, "We are very good at fighting if we have to, far better than anyone else." Meanwhile, President Trump said today that he received a letter from the communist leader speaking on Fox News.
He responded to a letter that I wrote because I had heard that China is giving weapons to you're seeing it all over the place, to Iran, that China's
Did he
giving
say he's
weapons.
giving them?
Yeah, and I wrote him a letter asking him not to do that, and he wrote me a letter saying that essentially he's not doing that.
President Trump also saying he was pleased with the reaction to the U.S. blockade on Iranian ports and coastal areas in the Strait of Hormuz, saying it has been amazing. The president also expressing optimism that oil prices will drop and the war in Iran could end soon.
If you told me that we were going to be at only $92 a barrel, I would have been very surprised.
All right.
And
so
you know what? I'm very happy. And it's going to come dropping down very big as soon as it's over. I think it's close to over, yeah. I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
President Trump also addressed Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, saying he could move to fire him if he does not leave his post when his term expires next month. Powell's term as chair ends on May 15th, but he could remain in place temporarily if a successor is not confirmed by the Senate. The president has nominated former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, but his confirmation has not yet been finalized. And on AI, the president says the U.S. is leading China, citing his move to allow companies to build their own power plants. The president also addressing the midterms, saying his administration is working hard to reverse the trend that the ruling party usually loses seats. President Trump said today that China has agreed not to provide weapons to Iran. Joining us now is Casey Fleming, chairman and CEO of Black Ops Partners Corporation and author of the book, The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm, Killing Your Freedom. Casey, good afternoon. Always good to see you. So can you speak to us about this? What has been China's actions in this war? Has it been providing weapons to Iran?
Yes, they have been providing weapons to Iran. Even during the first week of the war, there were 2 Iranian ships seen in port in China loading solid rocket fuel. So I absolutely believe President Trump is telling the truth, that Xi Jinping said, no, we will not arm Iran. But the point is, you can't trust Xi Jinping or the Chinese Communist Party. They have honored nothing in the past. For example, they've said many times with Obama, with Biden, with Trump in his first administration, that we will curtail fentanyl, but fentanyl is still rocketing the numbers. So anything that they promise, they never deliver. And that is part of their strategy. That is the communist strategy, to say one thing and fade up on top while you continue feverishly to do the opposite under the table.
Okay, you're correct about China's record, and that raises serious concerns. But what is China's strategy specifically? If it's appearing to say one thing to President Trump and then behind his back do another thing, I mean, it's not like the U.S. won't find out about China's actions. So what is the strategy here?
Well, we may or may not find out about the strategy. They have cloaked mechanisms for delivering these weapons. Namely, right now, shoulder-fired Stinger missiles, or equivalent shoulder-fired Stinger. Stinger is a U.S. missile. So we know that those are in transit. The intelligence community does know that, and there are other things that are being supplied to Iran during the ceasefire. So, and on the other side, as far as opening the Strait of Hormuz, here's the point, we are in a hot war. The United States is not in a war just with Iran. We are in a war with China. Remember, China is the grand master over Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea, Venezuela, drug cartels. And under Iran, the CCP has Iran managing the prime terrorist state, managing 6 terrorist organizations. So all China has to say is open up the Strait of Hormuz, and trust me, they've been strategic partners for well over a dozen years, and they would open up the Strait of Hormuz in a heartbeat. The point is, China's playing one game while doing another.
Okay, so about this hot war with Iran, what is China's interest in this war specifically?
The interest is completely to continue to weaken the United States. China has been involved with Ukraine, with the Russian-Ukrainian war since day one. They've been partnered with the Mexican drug cartels strategically for over a decade, with fentanyl and money laundering and human trafficking and child theft, those kind of things. I mean, they are a very dark and diabolical regime if you understand who the Chinese Communist Party is. So when we're fighting Iran, we definitely are fighting China behind the scenes. Now, China's not showing their face directly on this thing, but those negotiations, those 10 points of negotiation to sit down on the first set of trade talks were all created by China. And it was 100% a U.S. surrender, which was the result, or really the summary of those 10 points. So we are fighting China. We have been with unrestricted war for the past 30 years, but then also going after Iran with a hot war, or conventional war, means that we're also going after China with a hot war. We did it with Venezuela. We did it with the head of the top drug cartel in Mexico. And we're beating them back, not to mention what's going on right now with the Indonesian agreement, security agreement. So all these things combined, we salute Trump for beating China back after 30 years of being unchecked in their global aggression and global soft as well as military footprint. But this thing, make no mistake, this is China. We are, this is a tit for tat against China. We're choking them from an energy perspective, not just what's going on with Iran, but we're choking China from an energy perspective because they said, hey, we got you on rare earths. Trump came back and said, well, we're going to choke you on energy. So we're in a war with China, make no mistake. And when all this hand-waving going on with Iran, which is very important, and it is changing history, don't forget the bigger picture. The bigger picture is the Chinese Communist Party.
All right, Casey, a couple of threads here I want to pull on. So you said in this war with Iran, we're also fighting China. You said the 10-point plan was by China, and it's a U.S. surrender that the U.S. agreed to it, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But how does the U.S. win then, if you're saying it was a surrender? How does the U.S. come up on top victorious?
Let me clarify. The first 10-point plan that Iran put forth in the negotiations, that 10-point plan, when you summed it all up, if we agreed, and we did not agree to that 10-point plan, had we agreed to that 10-point plan, it would have been the summary of an American surrender on everything. They would still have nuclear capability, nuclear enrichment capability. They would still control, the IRGC would still control the Strait of Hormuz. We would let them out of their sanctions. I mean, it was complete surrender. And trust me, they would not have the authority or the gumption to put forth that unless China was completely behind it. When you understand the strategic partnership that China has with Iran and also Pakistan, that's also critically important. All this stuff comes together when you connect those dots. But if you're just looking this through an Iran war lens, you're only going to see what you're seeing up in front of your face. But there's a much bigger, much more powerful story behind the scenes when you know how to connect the dots.
Okay, so what has been the impact of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and the effective closure before the blockade as well on China? Because energy goes through that strait and a lot of it goes to China.
Yeah, China gets most of its energy through the Strait of Hormuz. So choking that Strait of Hormuz, all they had to do is say, hey, keep it closed for a week, but you need to reopen it. They could absolutely do that. Now that the United States has come in and basically performed and is performing a blockade, that changes the dynamic on Iran as well. It chokes Iran, but it also chokes China from an energy standpoint. So it was a smart move by Trump. It's going to go on for, I think, and we think, quite a long period of time. This police action in Hormuz is going to require quite a bit of time. Remember, IRGC still has drones under the water, drones on the surface of the water, drones in the air, combatants on the banks of the Strait of Hormuz. So in no way is this thing over. Yes, we've beaten them back into the Stone Age with their infrastructure, but the CCP has been helping them for over a dozen years, burying command and control and manufacturing, missile manufacturing, and storage inside of caves of granite and under the ground as well. So this, in our opinion, it's far from over. Yes, an air war, there's not much else to bomb from an air war perspective, but these terrorists are still in charge of the population. One last thing to remember, just another one of 100 things that the CCP has done to help China, is that they've taken stolen U.S. technology, which is surveillance, facial recognition, all that, to help the IRGC record and track dissidents and people who have a different opinion about the IRGC and want the IRGC out of power. They go to those homes, rip them out, and kill those people. And they also have snipers on rooftops to keep these people killed. The number that we have today in the intelligence community is, so far, the IRGC has killed over 80,000 innocent Iranian citizens.
Okay, so Casey, interesting development yesterday. Let me get your comments on this. The U.S. increasing defense cooperation with Indonesia. And the interesting part of that is it's giving Washington eyes over the Strait of Malacca. How do you read that situation? What is the significance? Is China vulnerable to pressure at Malacca?
Yes, they are. Most of their shipments, their oil shipments, come through that Strait of Malacca. And they have put in strategic partnerships all around the South China Sea and the South Pacific, which is Solomon Islands was one of the most recent ones. So this is another attempt by Trump to beat back China's global aggression. Now, remember, while all this Iran war was happening, something else happened by the Chinese Communist Party. They took over this island/reef 300 kilometers south of the current position of the current landholding of the Chinese Communist Party. So what that does, it extends now the international waters 300 kilometers south of where it is now in the South China Sea for the Chinese Communist Party. So that means we can't perform surveillance. Now we're 300 kilometers south, which is international waters where we can perform surveillance. So what they're doing is they're still building islands, strategic island, building them so they can call them their own islands, which should be against all international war and international treaties. So you have a very sneaky and deliberate enemy. You have to think like your enemy. And the problem with the United States and the West, we don't think like our enemy. And the enemy is very clear. It's the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, well said. Let me just ask you one last question here. So taking everything into consideration, and we know the meeting between President Trump and Xi Jinping is coming up in a few weeks, the cumulative impact on China with Venezuela, Iran, maybe the Strait of Malacca, does that put China in a weaker position going into this meeting with the United States?
It does to a small degree. Remember, in the mind of the Chinese Communist Party, it is their destiny to rule the world with no other state or country as a co-leader or a co-owner of the world. So their intent is to completely deny and destroy the Western civilization and the United States for total communist takeover. It's part of their 100-year plan from 1949. And they're way ahead of that plan, which is 2049. They're way ahead of that plan. We're showing it to be around 2035 of total global domination. So, remember, these guys never show weakness. Feign your power, play to your enemy's ego, all these things. And that's one thing Trump has, is a pretty strong ego. So they will say, oh, you're our friend. We will work with you. Anything that you need. The problem is Trump's telling the truth when he's being told this from Xi Jinping and the CCP. He's telling the truth. But those of us who know the CCP and Xi Jinping know it's an absolute lie. So Trump is, in our opinion, Trump is being manipulated, or on street terms, he's being played, both by the Chinese Communist Party and by Putin.
Yeah, well said. Let me just reiterate one thing you said. China is ahead of schedule in its global world domination. Casey, thank you for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Lawmakers on Capitol Hill are set to vote on a controversial section of a spy bill known as FISA. Critics could delay it while President Trump is calling on the GOP to unite. More news after this. Stay tuned.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hardworking neighbors are facing a hunger crisis. Many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America, not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community. And demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double in impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Hate is loud. It gets clicks. It gets attention. Hate, however, is actually quite small. But love is the majority, filling up something far more important than any feed. Love fills our hearts, our lives, our every day with understanding, empathy, and compassion, leaving hate to become what it truly is, a whisper.
First Lady Melania Trump now joins a group of bipartisan lawmakers on Capitol Hill. She looks to advance her second major legislative goal of this administration. She described it as, quote, designed to protect and empower individuals from the foster care community. President Trump said the mission is to strengthen America's next generation. Take a look.
And to all the representatives of this prestigious committee who have worked so hard to introduce decisive reform within foster care, Mr. Miller, Mr. Chow, Mr. Moran, Mr. Yakim, Ms. Moore, Mr. Evans, and Mr. Kerry, thank you. I would also like to extend my warm welcome to all of the Congresspeople in attendance today. Your bipartisan support is appreciated. And finally, a special thanks to Jacqueline Ronnie Faring and Jordan Martinez. We are gathered here today, not because America's children rely on us, but rather because America's children are our moral equals. As parents and leaders, it is our ethical obligation to ensure American children develop emotionally and physically within a safe environment. As a community, we strive to nurture our children's curiosity, protect their innocence, and guide them with hearts full of care. Through respect, participation, and protection, American parents deliver the essentials to our next generation: housing, nutrition, clothing, and healthcare. In safeguarding our children's well-being, we shape the integrity of our nation. But to get there, a strong knowledge base is required. Education is the cornerstone of a child's future. Clearly, education is the foundation that can remain throughout one's lifetime. Yes, knowledge is permanent. In 2021, I launched Fostering the Future, a nationwide initiative to provide individuals from foster care community with access to education and at the university level. My goal is to prepare these individuals to secure entry-level jobs, become financially independent, and eventually innovate, create new businesses, and generate employment opportunities. When I first developed Fostering the Future, one thing became very clear. The foster care community requires action over awareness. This truth stands today. I'm proud to share that Fostering the Future currently maintains a footprint of over 20 universities across the country from coast to coast. In fact, academic institutions such as Vanderbilt University, the University of Miami, LSU, UVA, the University of Texas, the Ohio State University, and the University of Alabama all educate fostering the future students. Although reports vary, roughly 3% of individuals in foster care community earn a college degree in 2025. We can close this gap. But still, foster youth face a special set of challenges outside the classroom that have a serious impact of their academic performance. These issues include housing instability, educational advocacy, financial barriers, transportation, continuity, access to technology, and other related issues. New legislation for the foster care community is a moral imperative. Some of you joined me in the White House last November for the signing of the Fostering the Future Executive Order. And although the executive order is a transformative vision, Congress now has the opportunity to create a lasting positive impact on this community. Beginning here in this room, we can once again change people's lives. With the new legislation, we can ensure that the opportunity is more than helpful for individuals in the foster care community. It can be their birthright. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Trump. It's an honor to have you with us. I would now like to turn to the two foster youth that we have with us today. Jaden Martinez is from Texas and a student at Stephen F. Austin University. Jaden has been in the foster care system since the age of 6. He has been formally recognized by Texas Governor Greg Abbott as, quote, the son of Texas. It's a big state, so the son of Texas for his advocacy efforts. Jaden, I invite you to share a few words.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Smith, Chairman LaHood, our First Lady, and members of the committee. My name is Jaden Martinez. I'm a freshman at Stephen F. Austin State University. Recently, Governor Greg Abbott named me the son of Texas for my resilience, a title earned by refusing to let the foster care system live in my future. But that honor doesn't describe where I started. Before I draped the flags over my shoulders, I was a 6-year-old entering foster care, scared, hungry, but hopeful.
And you were just watching First Lady Melania Trump in Washington calling for more action to help, to protect and empower individuals from the foster care community. And next, on Capitol Hill, lawmakers are gearing up to renew a controversial section of a spy bill known as FISA. The path forward is uncertain, with several Republicans telling NTD that they don't want to vote for it without major reforms. President Trump is calling on Republicans to unite. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more.
So today there's a floor debate and a vote on renewing Section 702 of FISA. That's a spy bill that allows the government to collect intelligence on foreign nationals living outside of the United States. That's what it's meant for. But some Republicans have raised concerns that there's not enough guardrails in place to prevent the government from unlawfully spying on Americans. Republicans made changes to the Section 702 of FISA 2 years ago when they did this renewal, but for some, those changes were not enough, and they're asking for more this time around. Listen.
I do not know why we're bringing it up now unless they want it to fail, because I don't see the path. I think we need warrants.
We should unite in making sure that the Americans aren't surveilled and searched without warrants pursuant to the Fourth Amendment.
And CIA Director John Ratcliffe was visiting with those Republican lawmakers behind closed doors today, trying to urge them to pass this clean renewal of FISA, though that was not even enough to sway some of the strongest opposers. Here's Chip Roy.
We've been very public about the kinds of things we want in terms of warrants, in terms of amici, in terms of fiscal reforms, in terms of criminal penalties for people who violate the law and are targeting Americans and contradicting the law. So those things are things that we can all go look at and see what we can get. I'm not saying we got to get everything we want, but we need to see more progress.
President Trump has urged Republicans to unite on this. In a lengthy post on Truth Social yesterday, he did acknowledge that he has had issues with FISA in the past because it was used to unlawfully spy on his 2016 campaign. But he said when it's used properly, it can do a good job of protecting Americans. Congressman Troy Nell says he still has reservations about this reauthorization, but this time around, he's willing to side with the administration. Here's Nels.
We have obviously conflicts and issues with Iran and stuff, and we need to make sure that we support our intelligence agencies to go after these terrorist organizations.
Now, House Speaker Mike Johnson, remember, has a very slim majority in the House. So even if he loses just a few Republicans, that could end up tanking this FISA reauthorization. That is, unless some Democrats come switch over on the aisle and vote with Republicans to get it done. So we could see that type of situation. Democrat leadership, though, has pushed back strongly on this. That doesn't mean all of their members will vote no on it, but because leadership has pushed back on it, that indicates they may not have Democrat votes to get this done. What we could see happen is similar to what we saw yesterday when this bill made it out of committee. Those Republicans who were critical of FISA reauthorization simply withheld their vote to allow the threshold for final passage to be lowered so that they could actually get it advanced out of committee. So we could see a similar situation take place on the House floor when it comes up for a vote later tonight.
A pro-life activist whose arrest by the FBI drew national attention has now reached a major settlement with the Department of Justice. The case is back in focus as the DOJ releases a new report alleging the Biden administration used federal law to target pro-life Americans. In 2022, pro-life activist Mark Houck was arrested by an FBI SWAT team at his home in Pennsylvania in front of his family over an alleged violation of the FACE Act. He pleaded not guilty and was later acquitted by a jury. Now, Houck has reached a settlement with the Justice Department worth more than $1 million after suing over what he called excessive force and a faulty investigation. The case comes as a new DOJ report based on hundreds of thousands of internal records alleges federal prosecutors under the Biden administration selectively enforced the FACE Act against pro-life activists. And the Department of Justice releasing a statement saying the Biden administration weaponized federal law against pro-life Americans. Joining us now is Ashley Hayek, Executive Vice President of the America First Policy Institute. So thank you for joining us today. Good afternoon to you. The DOJ releasing an 800-page report detailing how the weaponization worked and how it was weaponized against pro-life Americans. What is your stance on whether the Biden DOJ had a two-tiered justice system?
Well, this was a bombshell report by the Department of Justice, and it was very clear when you go through those documents, which are available online, and many of the emails are actually redacted. What we see is the Biden Department of Justice started working with NGOs, nonprofits to track pro-life people and their activities in order to prosecute them. They were persecuted, really. If you look at the number of people that were targeted for pro-life versus pro-choice, the abortion providers versus the prayers, it was 2-to-1. The sentences were also 2-to-1. It is absolutely undeniable. And unfortunately, this is not the first example of the Biden Department of Justice being weaponized against the American people. We saw it in the memo against the Catholic churches that the FBI had put out. We saw it, with parents' rights, with the memo that Merrick Garland issued around parental rights in school board meetings. Time and again, we saw it with Arctic Frost, where conservative groups had their emails and phone records monitored. It is completely unacceptable. This is not what the purpose of the Department of Justice is. And quite frankly, it undermines the trust in institutions, which is why people are so frustrated with government.
And let me just mention something else in addition to what you said, Ashley. The Biden administration, the DOJ, coordinating with Planned Parenthood to build cases on pro-life activists, and then withholding evidence as well, attempting to exclude jurors based on religion, using aggressive tactics, arrest tactics. What is your response to that?
Yeah, this is absolutely shameful. And we already saw that the Department of Justice has fired some attorneys. I believe there are probably still more attorneys in the U.S. attorney's offices that also need to be fired. And there should be a deep dive into that to make sure everyone who played a part in this is gone and purged from government so they can never, ever do this again. There has to be consequences for these actions. Or if you think about it, if there's a new administration in the future, they'll bring those same people back and they'll do it all over again. In fact, I was going through some of the documents and I saw one of the women who was the executive director of a task force that Merrick Garland stood up, the reproductive rights task force that was helping to coordinate some of these cases. She is now at Democracy Forward. And that is a group that is chaired by Mark Elias that constantly challenges President Trump's policies, files multiple lawsuits, is super egregious. And she came out of the Biden Department of Justice. And I have no doubt people like her will go right back in future administrations. So there has to be consequences for these actions. And just goes to show you the weaponization and radicalization of the left exists, and it is here, and it cannot be tolerated.
Okay, so Ashley, earlier you talked about the erosion of public trust in institutions. How do we recover this trust? How can institutions recover credibility after accusations like this?
That's a great question. And what we saw the acting Attorney General Todd Blanche do was release some of these documents to the public so that people can have a spotlight on what has happened and have confidence that this administration is not going to do that. This administration is going to protect Christians, people of faith, people who want to pray instead of are looking to, have that abortion. There are two sides to this, and people of faith should not be persecuted by the Department of Justice. So we've already seen massive transparency from this administration. We also have a president who very early on issued several pardons for the people who were pursued by Biden's Department of Justice. I think continuing that level of transparency and accountability is critical in order to have faith in the institutions.
And you bring up earlier future administrations. So the immediate question is, how do we prevent future administrations from committing similar actions?
I think part of it is shining a light on who the people are who acted in these cases. So, for example, the administration firing these attorneys who were involved, we know who they are. Their names have been made public. They cannot go back. And if they go back, it should be highlighted. And also, I do think that settlement that the Department of Justice made showing that this was wrong, that sets precedent for the future, so that if somebody is wrongly prosecuted, there needs to be some sort of consequence for those attorneys who are doing the wrong thing, who are not serving the people that they are sworn to serve. In many of these cases, when you serve in public office, you take an oath of office, and that is not what they do. And that includes the people in the Attorney General's office, the Deputy Attorney General's office, and in the U.S. Attorney's offices.
And Ashley, I'm wondering if we could take a step back. What is your feeling? Could you describe how you feel about the state of free speech right now in America, free exercise of rights? Is it that it's a bit more fragile than we like to believe? How do you feel?
I mean, we're in the freest country in the world, and we should be so incredibly grateful for that. We can go and protest one side or the other side of a war. We can go and pray outside of an abortion facility. We can protest outside of a pregnancy center if you do it the right way and the legal way. That's something that the men and women who put on the uniform fought and protected those freedoms for us. And so we have an administration who values that freedom. You look at other countries, they're not able to do that. And so I'm very grateful to our president. I'm grateful to the administration who values our fundamental basic rights. And we live in the greatest country in the world. It's our 250th birthday. We got a lot to celebrate.
Yeah, and we have to celebrate and safeguard it. Ashley, thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright is testifying before the House Appropriations Committee about the White House's fiscal 2027 budget request for energy policies. The hearing comes as energy costs have skyrocketed amid the U.S. operation in Iran following the regime's closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Indicated those, some of those last year, and then we get feedback from the applicant saying, I don't think you read my thing right. Will you hear me out? We say, of course we will hear you out. That's our job. We've had a number of projects where we've made decisions. We've been clarified and educated and thought, you're right. I think we misunderstood what you were doing there, or we thought it wasn't viable because we didn't see that connecting step that makes the math works. So absolutely, we are willing and ready to engage those. You referenced a lot of the projects or the dollars that we did cancel. Frankly, there were a lot of projects, large in scale, that had no meat on the bones. Hundreds of projects of hundreds of millions of dollars that didn't have a business plan, that would basically just spend the taxpayer money, and we'd have nothing new at the end. We'd have no new factory that stayed open or no new innovation that could have a business based on. We had giant amount of money going to massive American companies to produce mac and cheese that they already know how to produce, but to produce it with a little bit lower greenhouse gas emissions. How does that justify spending huge American dollars to deliver the same product but make it a little bit more expensive? Those are simply not projects, I think, in the American taxpayer interest, but there are many that were, and well over 80% of all these projects we reviewed in detail passed and are going on. And did we make mistakes in some of them? Absolutely. And are we willing to re-engage? You bet.
Well, that's good news. Thank you. Thank you. I know you'll give them careful review, but I've just seen so many places close in my career, and I just think where it's possible to advance manufacturing, we should do it. In view of the nature of the competition that many of these companies face. So thank you on that. I wanted to go to the nuclear deterrent issue. GAO reported in February that cost overruns on NNSA's 28 major construction projects have doubled, more than doubled, rising to $4.8 billion. So the plutonium pit production program is split across 2 sites, and it will likely cost well over $20 billion and still does not have a comprehensive life cycle cost estimate. Could you kind of talk about what specific project management reforms NNSA is implementing, and when will Congress receive a complete life cycle cost estimate for the pit production?
Thank you, Representative Capter, for raising that question. It is another serious passion of mine, is our nation's security. NNSA, as you recognize, is more than half of our department. Its management track record over the last decade or two has not been good. Another reason I was particularly frustrated that my minister for NNSA came in late last year, but we have tried to look at that endeavor, how it works, how the management incentives of people, and how to align. If you have X responsibility, but you're not empowered to do the things that are needed to deliver that responsibility, then the responsibility and the empowerment are misaligned. So we have realigned incentives, empowerment, and responsibilities. So basically trying to run it more like a business. And I'm happy to say, I think we're seeing rapid progress there. The pit production at Los Alamos has ramped up rapidly. We are both moving out old legacy equipment while actually manufacturing pits. We have people at the second site that you referenced that's going to be at Savannah River. Don't wait till we get that done. Come on out to Los Alamos and work with us in pit production today and developing the new lines and how we're going to manufacture this going forward. I think we're seeing a rapid acceleration in our capacity to build and construct pits, and that will come with a very critical eye to the design of the facility that'll be at Savannah River for pit production. We're learning because we're producing pits again for the first time in decades. Maybe the original plan we laid out wasn't ideal. Maybe we can be smarter. Maybe we can be more efficient about that.
All right.
You raise a very real question, a big issue.
Thank you. Glad you're got both hands on it.
Thank you, Ms. Capter. At this time, I would like to recognize my friend, the distinguished chairman of the Interior Subcommittee of Appropriations and a former chair of this committee, and he represents the great Idaho Reservation, my friend and mentor, Mike Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, I appreciate you achieving your goal of last year of visiting all of the DOE labs throughout the country. And I wasn't going to say this out of respect for my chairman and also out of respect for my friend from the Hanford PNNL area, but you saved the best for last. It was
Representative
great.
Simpson said this at the lab when we were together, and believe me, they liked it.
And they brought a cake that said that. Anyway, as you know, the INL is doing amazing things, and the demonstration of microreactors experiment, or the dome test bed, is now open and operating. It presents some really exciting times for nuclear energy in the future for these microreactors and other reactors. And this is there's obviously a lot going on at the INL, and much of that work is relying on unique facilities and infrastructure that the INL has. However, given that the INL is 75 years old, a lot of that infrastructure is almost as old as the INL is. And I appreciate the fact that President Trump and you put in this budget a proposed increase for the INL infrastructure account. And if Congress can deliver additional funding specifically to address infrastructure recapitalization of the INL, is DOE aligned to make it a priority to address the aging infrastructure at the lab site?
Absolutely, we are. And thank you for raising that. As I tour our facilities, and in the great state of Tennessee as well, our legacy facilities that ushered in the nuclear age, both in the weapons side, which sounds scary, but they've actually brought great peace and stability among the great nations of the world, and launched nuclear energy, particularly at INL and the original pile in the Chicago Squash Court. The first ever sustained controlled nuclear reaction is the genesis of Idaho National Lab. Yeah. So when I look at those aging facilities and how important they are to their future, I want nothing more than to accelerate the replacement of that infrastructure. Now, I have my own fights on budget, with the administration on how to do these things. So I get some wins, I get some losses. But can we deploy more capital to advance the infrastructure of our legacy labs faster? Absolutely, we can. Will it aid the mission to bring in this nuclear renaissance, to more rapidly modernize our weapons stockpile and all that? Absolutely it will.
I appreciate that. A couple other issues. This really isn't a question. It's just something I want to make you aware of, and I'm sure you are. The Idaho delegation sent a letter last week to you, and I didn't realize that this existed until about a year ago. As you know, the DOE site in Idaho, I think the same thing is true at Hanford, is not owned by all of it by the DOE. Much of it's that crosshatch of land, Department of Interior, BLM land, and DOE land. And this complicates the working with two different federal agencies that creates some problems. I wanted just to make you aware of that and hope that DOE and DOI and the delegation can work together to try to solve this problem, not only at Idaho, but also, if it's necessary, at Hanford, because DOE ought to own that land at the DOE site.
I agree entirely, and I am aware of the issue, and I will work with Secretary Burgum. Of course, it's a legacy of building the railroads across the United States and this cross-hatching of sections that were distributed. But yeah, I agree. It's a problem we should solve, and I don't see any reason we can't solve it. But I need to work with the Interior Department to do that.
I appreciate that. One more question. Recent incidents have raised concerns about the presence of unauthorized wireless signals and devices within sensitive and classified spaces across federal facilities, including those under the DOE. Those signals, whether from personal devices, rogue access points, or foreign surveillance tools, pose a risk to national security by creating vulnerabilities for data or unauthorized disclosure. As DOE oversees critical nuclear and energy infrastructure, ensuring strict control over wireless activities inside secure environments is essential. What specific steps is the Department of Energy currently taking to detect, prevent, and mitigate unauthorized wireless devices within classified or sensitive DOE facilities? And does the department maintain a comprehensive real-time capability to monitor and track unauthorized wireless devices and signals in secure spaces? And how are those incidents detected, analyzed, and reported to ensure accountability and continuous improvement?
Yeah, so again, you raise a huge question. The risk of cyber threats, the risk of devious behavior, even of drones over our sites is growing rapidly. We are aware of it. We have efforts to address it. Do we have a comprehensive plan that I can say is going to work rock solid? No, we don't yet. But that is absolutely a front and center topic for us. And I think we're going to see it across the government, just growing risks of cyber espionage, misbehavior, and we need to get serious, and we need to have a better system to deal with the evolving threats.
I've always been worried about a nuclear attack, but I will tell you a cyber attack is more scary than just about anything.
Yes.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. At this time, I'd like to recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Ms. DeLauro, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Wright, thanks again for coming before us today to discuss the budget request. On October 1st, Secretary, during a government shutdown, your department announced the termination of $7.5 billion in energy awards across more than 200 projects. Those project terminations targeted states that voted for Vice President Harris in the 2024 presidential election. The very next day, you were on CNN and told the American people that this was just a, quote, partial list and that more terminations were coming. You said, and I quote, as this fall goes on, you'll see cancellations in red and blue states, end quote. That was 7 months ago. So effectively, the only projects that have been terminated were targeted at blue states, including two with direct ties to my district in Connecticut, which is a very parochial interest, as you can imagine. And when this was challenged in court, your own department didn't even try to deny it. Department of Education and of Energy and OMB admitted in a legal filing that, and I quote, a primary reason for the selection of which DOE grant termination decisions was included in the October 2025 notice tranche was whether the grantee was located in a blue state, end quote. The district court this January found that this violated the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of equal protection under the law. You did not appeal that ruling. So let me be direct, Secretary. You claimed that the project reviews were not conducted on political grounds. It appears that that was not true. The courts have ruled that targeting blue states is unconstitutional. Your own lawyers have conceded that point. So given that you did not appeal the court's ruling, will you now reverse all remaining blue state terminations that were selected on the same unconstitutional basis?
So let me restate again, all of the 2,270 projects we evaluated were not evaluated in any way, shape, or form based on where they were. And the award location is just one address. Most of these awards involve cross-state collaboration. They're getting supplier pieces here. The award could be in one state, and most of the money spent in another state. So this is a broad-based efforts on where these things go, and all of the people that worked on our project review process did not take into account any politics in the evaluation of these projects.
I understand what you're saying that, but the district court this January found that this violated the Fifth Amendment's guarantee of equal protection under the law. Your own department didn't try to deny that that was the decision, based on the decision that was whether a grantee was located in a blue state. So, Mr. Secretary, your department canceled projects based on the fact that they were located in states that voted for Vice President Harris. And again, your own lawyers conceded the point in court. I'm not making that up. I read you the quotes. Did they lie to the judge? And do we need to look to disbarment procedures for these folks? Apparently, there's a discrepancy between what you are saying and what the court determined about those projects. So I think that of some concern, and my hope would be that you would reinstate those projects that were denied to blue states, like my own state of the Revolution Wind Project in the state of Connecticut, because in fact the court ruled that illegal action. Let me move to another question, which has to do with energy rebates. The administration is not just driving up the cost of gas. It's using spending freezes, grant cancellations to attack clean energy projects, attacking federal programs that are aimed directly at helping families address rising utility bills. In addition,
and you were just watching Energy Secretary Chris Wright testifying before Congress. And we're taking a break. It's tax day. We speak with a tax expert about last-minute filing tips and how new policies could impact your bottom line. More after this break.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School, college first-round draft pick. On and off the field, we were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating, but I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love, you're mine.
Hi, I'm Susan Lucci. You may know me from my many years on television. I never thought about heart disease until I had my own heart event. I felt this slight pressure in my chest, just slight. I thought, oh, it's nothing, it'll go away. I didn't get it. I did not get it. But a few days later, while shopping at a boutique, that pressure returned, much stronger. It felt like an elephant pressing on my chest. I had a 90% blockage in my main artery and a 75% blockage in the adjacent artery. I was rushed into surgery where I received 2 stents in my arteries. Stents developed through research funded by the American Heart Association. Those stents saved my life. That's why I'm in front of you today, asking you to join me in supporting the American Heart Association by becoming a monthly donor. Call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough. Get the next person trained in CPR, the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care. I'm so grateful to the American Heart Association. Their research helped save my life. I can enjoy life with my children, my grandchildren, and my friends. Heart disease is America's #1 killer, and your support now can help save your life or the life of someone you love.